This is the BenQ PD2730S, a 5K Apple Studio Display competitor with a pretty decent price tag. Let's check it out.
This is Brad. He likes to review the tech. He also likes to draw. And this here is his theme song.
I reviewed the Studio Display and the Studio Display XDR and followed it up by looking at the Asus ProArt 5K display. And price-wise, this 5K BenQ monitor fits right in the middle, in between that ProArt monitor and the Studio Display. Quality-wise, it's right there as well. I was really liking the Asus ProArt display as a monitor, but the one area where I felt like it was lacking was build quality. The plastic shell and the little details were just such a contrast to the Apple Studio displays I had been using. The BenQ definitely improves on that. As far as materials go, this isn't trying to keep up with Apple's aluminum frames, opting instead for a matte white plastic outer shell with what looks like and feels like an aluminum stand. If it's not aluminum, it's another kind of metal, and it looks pretty good. Now that plastic body, not necessarily a bad thing, because here it feels like a very quality, heavy piece of equipment, well built. Doesn't look quite as slick as the Studio Display. Along the front, there's a plastic shell casing around the entire screen, as opposed to the Studio Display's flat glass that goes across the entire display. It's got a small plastic chin. The bezels aren't as pronounced as what you see on the Studio Displays. Now, when I'm using a Studio Display as a solo monitor, I don't really care about bezel size. But when I had two Apple displays next to each other, that created a pretty big gap between them. And using this display next to another display I was checking out, the Asus ProArt display had a much smaller gap, and I really liked that. Now along the back, we have a lot of different connection types. HDMI 2.1, a DisplayPort connector, also 3 USB Type-C ports. One is a Thunderbolt for plugging in, and another one is an upstream port, so you can daisy chain off this monitor. Also, if you have one computer attached to one of those ports and another computer attached to another one of those ports, you can easily just swap between those sources. Along the bottom, we have a whole USB hub with 3 USB Type-A ports and another USB Type-C. There's also a headphone jack down there as well. Let's dig into the specs. Actually, before we do, shout out to today's sponsor, me. If you've ever thought to yourself, I like drawing, I should sign up for a drawing class, I have the thing for you. Over at bradsartschool.com, I have my Learn to Draw in 60 Days course every day, a new lesson really geared for beginners. So if you've taken other drawing tutorials and thought, what am I missing? This is meant to fill in those holes. If you'd like to learn more, check out my website and don't forget to use the code MONITORMONTH to save a little money at checkout. So those specs, this is a 27-inch 5K IPS LCD display with HDR support. Why are all these monitors 5K anyway? It has something to do with pixel scaling. The standard resolution of a Mac is 1440p. 5K is exactly double the pixel width and pixel height of 1440p, which leads to a crisper text and interface elements on a 5K display than on a 4K display, which has to squash and stretch pixels to make them all fit. Now this panel has a 60 Hz refresh rate. This has a matte coating on the display. Now when I was talking to Art is Right about monitors and color accuracy last week, there's a whole interview up on my channel. Great talk. I learned a lot. You should check it out. I asked him, why do so many creative displays have a matte finish? And he said that there were two reasons. One was to cut down on the reflections because you don't really want to see yourself in a glossy monitor when you're trying to get the colors right. And two, if your work pops on a matte display, it's going to look even better on a glossy one. It doesn't always work the other way around. This display gets up to 400 nits of brightness. The Asus that I was testing gets up to 500 nits, and the standard Studio Display is at 600. Now the colors in general on this display look fantastic with 100% sRGB and 98% DCI-P3. The one spec that I think a lot of people are going to pick out of that is that 120 Hz. I would love to see more monitors, at least monitors for creatives, go for that 120 Hz spec. A lot of creative monitors seem to be stuck at 60 Hz, but a lot of us use our computer displays for more than just work. It's surprisingly hard to find a 5K display that runs at 120 Hz. I only found one. That was a different Asus monitor. But there are 4K displays designed for creatives that come in at 120 Hz. My favorite display I've ever reviewed actually was a 4K BenQ monitor just last year. It was awesome. That thing came in at 120 Hz. I loved that. It was also 32 inches, so it was a little bigger too. Now next to my MacBook, this thing looks fantastic. Looking at the photos and the colors, the images, they are so close. I didn't even bother to calibrate this thing because it just looked good out of the box. It is factory calibrated, so it was fine. If you're looking for like super accurate color, you're probably going to be a little different than me. I'm looking for color consistency between displays because I'm not like a hardcore color guy with my work. But oftentimes with monitors, if your laptop screen and monitors look a little bit different, calibrating is the way to go. What I really noticed here were the whites. If I have a white web page open, like if I was typing a document or something like that, the blues in that white look a little different. Maybe the other display, that white like pushes a little bit more towards the reds. I see it more there than I saw it in like photos in my design work. When we're talking about that kind of consistency, matching your MacBook's laptop screen to your display, that was something that the studio displays just absolutely nailed out of the box. And it's cool to see that the BenQ was coming so close without me needing to adjust a lot of things. Studio displays still did better, but it wasn't that far off. Now, when I was testing the Asus, that pushed more into those reds, like I mentioned before. I did have to calibrate that to make it look good on my Mac. Now, you've probably seen this little puck in some of the videos that I'm showing in the background here. This is the Hotkey Puck 53. Actually, it might be S3. I don't see the name on here. Either way, it's a puck. It comes in the box. It's not an extra purchase. I love it. You know how when you want to control the color, the contrast, the brightness on a monitor, you have all those knobs and buttons and you're always accidentally going backwards or closing the window when you're trying to select something? Boom, here you go. All of that is controlled in this little knob. It replaces all that. Just turn it to adjust the brightness on the fly and you're good to go. Pressing down on the dial lets you cycle through some of the options like changing the contrast or accessing the menu. You can tap the info button along the bottom to bring up all your on-screen options like most monitors have, but you control that all with the dial. It has these 3 buttons along the side. By default, those are set to different color modes. Want to see it in P3? Here you go. Want to see it in your MacBook color? Here you go. And you can just easily swap between those things. So if you're designing for print, how does it look in print? Does it still look good on the screen? Let's flip over and look. One of those really nice touches that I'd never really thought about, and so much easier than navigating those little buttons on your display just to see how it looks in a different color profile. You can also set these buttons to your favorite program and easily flip between them, like Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere. Now, BenQ has some optional software you can install here. If you don't have a color calibrator, they have something called Color Talk. That will match your color spaces on different laptop screens to your different monitor brands. I didn't need that since mainly I was testing on a Mac, and there's actually a preset on this display for Mac that works perfectly well. Now, the stand here is really solid. It's metal. It's very heavy, anchored to your desk. It is not going anywhere. This is a height adjustable stand, and I joked on my studio display videos about how Apple has applied all of their engineering prowess to solving a solved problem with their fancy stand. It is cool. I will give them that. But to add $400 more to the already pricey studio display, cool? Probably not. This stand is surprisingly smooth. It's not as light to the touch as Apple's display and moving that up and down. You do need to put your arm into it. It does go pretty darn high. It's not quite as high as the studio display stand, but it goes a lot lower, so the range of motion is greater here. And you have the added bonus of this swiveling to a full portrait view, which you just can't do on the Apple stand unless you get the VESA mount option and mount it to an arm. Now, one of the things I liked about this is that it only spins one way, which is good because I know that I'm perfectly square at the top and at the bottom. With the Asus, you could swivel it both ways, and so I was always wondering if it was like aligned properly or if I had to straighten it out a bit. The BenQ overall, really nice stand. Now, while the BenQ stand is really nice, if you have a monitor arm, you can just pop this stand off and it's VESA mount compatible out of the box. I love Apple's stand from like a design perspective. It looks cool. It functions well, but if you're looking for ease of use and just the number of options available to you in terms of like tilting it back and forth and things like that, the Asus stand, this stand, just better. Now, I think both this and the Asus ProArt I reviewed are great, cheaper alternatives to the studio display. Spec for spec, they're both better values. The one thing I do love about the studio display that I don't think any other brand can really replicate is design. It just looks so good on a desk. This does not look bad though, and from a build quality standpoint, I think that's what elevates this over the Asus, but it's also a few $100s more than the Asus. I totally see why this comes in where it comes in terms of price. And if you want something that's just a little bit better than what Asus has out there, this is the option for you. For Macs, this is a great monitor. Now for PCs, because 4K does look super crisp on Windows, you're better off looking at some of those 4K displays like that BenQ that I reviewed last year that I like so much. But for 5K, this is really good. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.